Welcome. I'm Jeremiah Reiner, and this is the Deeply Rooted Podcast. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Deeply Rooted. Thank you guys for tuning in, wherever you're at, however you may be listening. We really appreciate the support and the encouragement and definitely the prayers. We hear those and get a chance to talk to a lot of our listeners often online and in person, so we really appreciate all the support for all things Deeply Rooted Podcast. We've got a really good episode lined up. A good friend of mine, Pastor Robbie Haynes, is going to be on here with us for this episode. But before we dive into a conversation with him, a couple of quick announcements really fast. Don't forget, we've got a Deeply Rooted Equip coming up July 20th. That's going to be in Elizabethton, Tennessee at Eastside Baptist Church. My good friend Cameron Dula is going to be preaching that service for us. It's going to be a special start time at 12 o'clock. So if you're in the Northeast Tennessee area, make sure you come on out. Again, 12 o'clock, Eastside Baptist Church, Deeply Rooted Equip, with Brother Cameron Dula providing the message. And don't forget, if you haven't already, early bird rates have passed, but you can still get your tickets for the Deeply Rooted Conference. We're going to be hosting that again November 8th and 9th this year back in Kingsport, Tennessee with our good friend Josh Banks there at Shepherd's Rock Bible Church. We're going to be looking at all things Holy Spirit. That's going to be our topic this year. We're really pleased to have, Lord willing, Brother Tim Challies and Justin Peters coming in as a couple of keynote speakers. And, of course, the usual lineup that we've had over the last few years of all the gentlemen that have been so gracious in helping out with the Deeply Rooted Conference. They'll be speaking as well in some different sessions and some breakout sessions as well. So again, November 8th and 9th, Deeply Rooted Conference. Make sure you go onto our website, deeplyrootedconference.org. You go up there to the right-hand corner. You can grab that tab, and that'll take you to where you can buy those tickets. So make sure you grab those, sign them up. Anybody and everybody, we look forward to seeing you there again, November 8th and 9th, Kingsport, Tennessee, at Shepherd's Rock Bible Church. Now, all that out of the way, now for the fun stuff. I've been looking forward to talking to this guy for a while. We go back probably further than most people realize, but we're glad to have Brother Robbie Haynes on here with us this evening. We're recording this. This is July 2nd, so we'll see when this drops, but Robbie is now the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Jonesville. He's a lifelong resident of Lee County, Virginia. He's married to his lovely wife, Shannon, who I tried to get on the episode just a moment ago before we kicked off, but she was too shy and didn't want to be a part of it, but that's okay. 3 grown children now, which is blowing my mind. We talked about that before we got on the air, and not 1 but 2 grandchildren now. So he is. Do you go by Papa or Granddad? What is your name?
Right now, it seems to be Pawpaw.
Pawpaw. Okay, I like it. Yeah.
We take what you take, whatever you can get with them. Yeah.
Well, I can remember you when you were young, spry, basketball shooting, ping pong playing. Now you're Pawpaw, and I can't believe that. But you haven't aged a bit, which is great to see. So, man, thanks for coming on the podcast, though.
Thank you for having me. I've looked forward to this.
To catch everybody up to speed really quick, why don't you fill us in on your testimony personally? How did you come to faith in the Lord?
Oh, wow. Well, I was a church kid. I was, as far back as I can remember, I was in church. My parents had me in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, any other night that anything was going on. And I honestly can't remember a time in my life when I wasn't in church and our family was involved in church. But when I finally made a public profession of faith and came forward and gave my life to Christ, I was about 9 years old. And I can remember that day to this day, sitting there on, I think, the second row with that death grip on the pew in front of me, as I had many, many times before, just waiting for that last stanza and just praying that the pastor didn't say, "Let's do one more stanza."
Yeah.
But it was there that I went forward. But I had actually met with my pastor that week before in VBS, in Bible school. He had got me aside and talked to me, and I had already given my life to Christ in my bedroom by myself but I had that conversation with him and confirmed some things, and then came forward in the church and made that public, and was baptized pretty soon after that too. So
What church would that have been at?
that was Mount Carmel Baptist Church in Woodway.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting enough, I live in Mount Carmel, Tennessee, so
Yeah, different place.
different place. Yeah.
Yeah.
From that point on, were you pretty involved in ministry, or is that something that took root a little bit later in life?
Well, we were always involved in church. My family was involved in church. My mom and dad taught. My dad's a deacon. Um, and I did develop a burden for people early on, people's souls.
Mm.
Even as a child, I can remember our neighbors and things, and even talking to them and trying to get them just to come to church. And even at a point where once my parents even had to say, hey, you might need to back off a little bit because you're going to push them the other way. But that was just something, that I had a burden for early on. So.
How old were you when you felt like the Lord was calling you into ministry and really took to that calling?
I was about 12 when I really began to sense that God might be calling me to preach, to pastor in some sort. In fact, I was 12 the first time I ever spoke in church. It was a youth service that we had, and the pastor had asked me if I would do the message that day. And so that was my first time behind a pulpit.
Do you remember what you said?
I don't really remember much of what I said, and I don't think most people could understand or hear what I said because I pretty much cried the whole time. In fact, I felt, I'll be honest, when I finished, in my mind, I said, I'll never do that again. I mean, that was just, I literally, I cried so much and had such a hard time getting things out that the pastor at one point, I can remember, he was on the front row and he motioned and started like, do you want me to come and relieve you? And I waved him off because I at least wanted to try to get through what I had. But it was just an overwhelming experience, and I just decided I'm not putting myself in that position ever again. Really, is what I said in my mind. So,
did you and Shannon grow up together and go to high school together and church, maybe?
Not church, but we went to high school together. Didn't really notice each other till my senior year, her junior year, and I asked her out to the prom my senior year, and from then on, that was in 1989. So yeah.
No tears that time. You were pretty confident, right?
Do what?
I said no tears that time. You were pretty confident, right?
No. Well, I wasn't very confident, but I was probably, my voice was probably shaking a lot. I remember.
Now, when you graduated, did you know immediately that you were going to get into something medical?
No, I didn't have a clue. I was going to go to the NBA. No, I didn't know. I didn't have a clue. I just knew I was going to go to college, and didn't really know.
Where did you end up?
I went to Clinch Valley.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Clinch Valley at the time. So.
Did you finish there, or did you transfer somewhere else?
No, I was there 3 years and majored in biology there, and then I got accepted to chiropractic school, and I went to Atlanta to chiropractic school and was there for 4 more years to finish that up. So.
Now, were you and Shannon married then, or did that happen after?
That happened after that was 93. So I think that was after our first year of chiropractic school, because we both went to chiropractic school, and we were both down there. We had separate apartments and things, but we both knew that we were going to get married. And finally, it was just like, you know what are we waiting on? Let's just, do this. And so we got married down there after our first year in chiropractic school. Yeah.
Was there any thought about staying down there?
Not after the third year. 3 years in Atlanta, and we were ready to get out of there.
We went and visited my brother. They moved down there back last year, and 2 days was good enough for me with that traffic. I just overwhelmingly thought I'm not cut out for big city life. I like one or two stoplights and smooth, easy traffic. So I know the feeling. But was she aware of how serious you were about ministering?
At that phase in my life, I wasn't, quite honestly, because the high school years and those early college years, God wasn't my focus, quite honestly. My focus was my career. What am I going to do? How am I going to make a good living? How am I going to, have that American dream that everybody's going after?
Yeah.
And I just assumed, I guess, well, that's what God wants me to do. He wants me to be successful. He wants me to go get a good education, to get degrees, to get a good job. And honestly, I had so put that behind me that I wasn't even considering him in a lot of those decisions. She was way more serious about her walk with the Lord than I was at that time. Way more. So.
Was that convicting?
Yes, it was. I can remember we hadn't been dating long. It might have been the first or second date, and we were. I think we were at Pizza Hut there in Pennington, and she said, "Aren't you going to pray before you eat?" And I can remember her kind of calling me out on that, and I thought, well, I hadn't even thought about it, quite honestly, But she was in a different place in her walk with the Lord than I was at that time. Yeah.
Did she grow up in a Christian family?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Her father. Watching her father really caused me to examine my own walk and my faith and my relationship with the Lord. Just seeing the life that he lived and how he lived and how he approached decisions. He was a medical doctor. He was doc in the community here.
Yeah.
But he sought the Lord in everything. I mean, everything. And that was convicting.
So you guys are married. You're in chiropractic school. You're finishing up now, and then you moved back to Lee County, I presume. Is that correct?
Kind of, yeah. We moved back to Lee County, but I worked in Bell County. Her uncle was a chiropractor there, so I worked with him for a while till we got some things lined out with licensing and everything in Virginia. So, yeah.
So when does preaching come into the picture again?
Well, it came in. It came into the picture again my last year in chiropractic school. We were at a church down there in Atlanta that we went to, and they were doing the Experiencing God Bible study by Henry Blackaby. I don't know if you've ever done that before.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, tremendous study. I highly recommend it. And I think I can't remember if it's week 7 of that study, but it is based on the life of Moses. And somewhere around the middle part of the study, you come to what's called the crisis of belief. And that was in the study, it's when God calls Moses to be used to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. And Dr. Blackaby says, we can say whatever we want about what we believe, but it's when God speaks, what we do truly shows what we believe. And when God speaks, he talks about how it always creates a crisis of belief. Am I going to believe God at his word? And when we got to that point in that study, it was like God just began bringing all of those convictions back that I had kind of suppressed for so long about what he'd called me to do in ministry and things. And it was heavy to the point that we came home for Thanksgiving break not long after that. And then in returning, I don't think we completed that study, if I remember correctly. And a part of it was because I was under such conviction. If you don't trust God in that crisis of belief, there's nowhere further to go in that study. And he even said at the beginning that a lot of people drop out of the study about that point when you come to that. And I was one of those that I checked out after that because I thought, man, 3 years undergraduate school. I'm going on 4th year here in graduate school. A lot of debt, student loans, a lot of time invested. And God, you're calling me to this. I can't. In my mind, I'm thinking, I can't do that. I'm too far in the direction I'm going. And so that's when it really started hitting me again and hammering me pretty heavy. And then when we moved back here, I was working in Middlesboro, but I was getting ready to open my practice in Pennington. And so the building I had in Pennington was one big room, and my dad was a carpenter, so I grew up learning to do that. So I was doing the build out in that room and petitioning everything off and doing the sheetrock and drywalling everything. And so I worked on that for weeks or months, and it was just me in there most of the time. Well, me and God.
Yeah.
And he just kept hammering me with that. And it was about the time of Easter. And my pastor at Mount Carmel, he said, why don't you ask your father-in-law if he'll do the sunrise service? And I thought, okay. And when he told me that, it was like God just, how sometimes you just get those clear as a bell. God said, you need to do that. But anyway, I thought, no, God, he asked me to ask my father-in-law. I'm going to ask him. So I asked Shannon's dad, I said, would you like to host our sunrise service? And he said, we haven't had one for years at our church, but we're having one this year. And he said, I need to be there. So I was like, man, because that was my out,
Yeah.
And so I didn't say anything for a few nights. And one day, Shannon and I was driving by our pastor's house there in Pennington, and I just pulled over in this driveway. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I gotta talk to him." I said, "I think God wants me to do that sunrise service." And so I went in and told him. Of course, he was all excited and glad to have me do it. And I still remember I stood up there that morning. And I cried the whole time, just about like I did when I was 12 years old, man. But I didn't say, when that one was over, I did not say, I'm never doing this again. I knew what God was calling me into.
How long before you preached again?
It wasn't real long. I started, he would have me fill in for him. He had me do some Wednesday night teaching. And then as I began to do that there, people in the community began to call me to come in and fill in when a pastor would be gone or things. And so I did that pulpit supply thing for, probably 10 years.
Mm.
And even coming up to Wise, to Ridgeview Baptist, which is what it was called before Grace Point was there. I preached there at Ridgeview for 9 months, did pulpit supply.
Wow.
And was still at that point knew in my heart that I wasn't doing what God had called me to do, because God had called me to more. And I don't say this bragging. I tell this to people because I was so involved in our church, but yet I was so out of the will of God. I was the chairman of the pastor search committee. I was uh, teaching a very large Sunday school class in that church, and I was preaching for the church 3 days a week on their radio ministry. And I was running from God while I was doing all of that because I knew God was calling me to pastor. And so even when I submitted to preaching, I didn't fully, even at that point, submit to just completely obeying God.
Right.
You know.
Now
And
you
so
dropped the line about Ridgeview, and eventually that's kind of where our paths would cross. How did all that work out for you to eventually come there? There'd be a name change, and then it's not Robbie Haynes filling in; it's Pastor Robbie Haynes.
Yes. Well, and it was all God, because when I was doing pulpit supply at Ridgeview, one of the deacons approached me and said, "Hey, we would really like you to consider taking this church." And I think it was just about then that I finally surrendered to the call and had my ordination, and some of them came down and participated in that and everything. But Shannon and I talked, and it was everything that we were looking for. It was right near the college. It was just, there was so much about that I thought, wow, this is exactly what I feel like God's been calling me to. But Shannon and I talked about it, prayed about it, and honestly, she gave me probably some of the best wisdom there, just listening to my wife, because she said, I just don't have a peace about this. And I guess I didn't either completely. And so I turned that down, and which was hard. And we walked away from that place. We left that place. We were expecting Hannah, her daughter. Okay, to give you some perspective there. She was in the womb at that time.
So
they gave us a baby.
That's your youngest of the three, by the way, for everybody listening. Yeah.
Yeah, they gave us a baby shower, did all that. We left, and in my mind, I thought, well, wow, there was an opportunity. A year and a half later, or roughly that, I get a call from someone at that church that they're disbanding, and want to know if I would come up and preach a couple of messages. They're voting on disbanding. So I went up and preached a couple of messages, and then that was it. And they voted to disband. The SBCV voted to do a restart there, or took them to do a restart. And someone from SBCV called me and said, would you be interested in taking this church as a church plant pastor? So we ended up there. And it was kind of crazy because I ended up in the place that I never thought I'd be back at under a totally different circumstance, though, with that restart. It was just, and they were shocked, too, when they found out that I had taken it, because I had turned it down, a couple of years previous. So it was just interesting how God brought all that to be.
How long did that, I guess the big fancy lingo, be revitalized, the church? How long did that all take place?
I was there about 8 years. I don't remember the exact, I think 8.5, I think. But yeah.
And what year would that have been that you officially began to pastor there?
Man, I couldn't even guess. I've been at the church I'm at now roughly it was probably about 17 years ago, roughly.
Okay,
because I don't remember the date.
Yeah, just to fill everybody in, because I'll give you your flowers here while we got you on. And this is a credit to the church too, not just you. So I'm gonna really tip my cap to you. But I was in college at that time. I was one of those students you were talking about on that campus, and due to the job that I had, there was a lot of weekends we couldn't leave. And a lot of friends that I'd made in that job, by God's grace, were good Christian guys. And we were in the same boat, and a lot of those men lived even further than I did. I was about an hour down the road. They were 2, 3, 4, some of them, away from home. And so we all just got together and said, well, we got to go to church, so we got to go somewhere. And we started I'm not going to use the word church hopping, because we really were actually searching out places, and we didn't really know a lot of people in the area. And we went to 3 or 4 before we eventually landed one Sunday morning at Grace Point. We'd been invited by a friend of mine. He had a classmate. I think they were taking math class or something like that together. And she had invited us and knew that we were looking, and so a lot of us showed up. And I remember thinking, if it's anything like the last church we visited, this isn't going to go well, because they basically thought they didn't want us there, which was shocking, like today, to think here's 4 college-age men with Bibles in hands, like ready to go, and it was almost like we weren't even invited, which was flooring to think about that. But as soon as we came in, I mean, people could not have been nicer, and we felt right at home there. And I remember thinking, man, this is a good place. And of course, time goes on, and we stuck it out there, and I had a chance to really be a part of the church and got rolling. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, I was basically fighting the Robbie Haynes battle for a couple of years of my own life. Since about I was 17, 18, senior year of high school, like I really knew, like you mentioned, like adamantly, this is it. Like there was really no question about the direction I think God wanted me to go. And I just kicked against that so hard because it was all excuses. It was never doubting the Lord. It was always doubting me. You know, just a very shallow view of God and just puffed up view of myself. And, you know, after time goes on and you get involved in enough ministries, like you said, you're doing it so much, you're thinking, why don't I just come out and say this? Like, why don't I just admit what's blatantly obvious? And I'll never forget, I called you into your office one Sunday, and I sat you down, and I said, I need to ask you a question. And it was as if you knew exactly what I was about to say before I even opened my mouth. And I think you said something along the lines of, like, how long have you been wrestling with that? And, of course, we had a great conversation, and, I mean, you guys could not have been nicer, and that kind of jump-started, you know, my life in ministry. I bring that up because this is year 15 for me. So that's how long ago that's been that you and I sat down and had that conversation. And you guys are very kind, I mean, to let me participate there. And, I mean, you even shared the pulpit with me multiple times when I probably didn't have a dog in that race whatsoever. And but I do want to bring that up because you know, it's crazy when you think of the providence of God, that He's not just working in your life, but He's way ahead in other people's lives, orchestrating things. And I share this with our congregation all the time, and I think it gets abused, but I don't think it should. I think it's one of the greatest verses in the Bible, and I don't think we think about it often enough in a picture of like a big God theology. But He really is working all things together for good to them that love Him and are called according to His purposes. And we don't see all of that in the moment, and we don't see all of it, period. I had no idea that He was working on your end years before that, and our paths would cross, you know, and vice versa. You had no idea that there'd be a young 22-year-old kid walking to your office one day and, you know, fighting similar battles. But I wanted to bring that up because to me, it's amazing the big God that we serve and how good He is to us in spite of all of our weaknesses and flaws and sin nature, and how gracious He is to us. And I don't think it's an accident that church was called Grace Point, because that's exactly what we found there is a lot of it. So I just appreciated that. I wanted to tell you that. I wanted the audience to know that, like, up front. And back to your story now that we...
Well, I'll just add to that too real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I can remember the day you were pulling out of the church parking lot. You hadn't started coming there yet. I don't remember if we were playing ball or why you had been there. There was something with some of the college, I say kids there. And Brittany Bailey at that time was at the church lobby. And I said, who is that guy? And she told me, and I said, does he go to church anywhere? And she said, well, I don't know, but he needs to come here. And I said, yes, he does.
Yeah, I was probably playing basketball or something. I'm sure I was playing basketball. I was always looking for a game somewhere. Right. And that's true, that she was the one I mentioned that had told my friend that we should come. She found out that we were all looking for a church. They had some classes together, and that's kind of how that orchestrated. So she really did end up inviting all of us, and just a small world, if you think about it, like looking back on that. But yeah, just, I mean, again, big grace of God on all of us there, and
Yes.
good years. Like I look back on that very fondly. Very, very good years in my own life, and I appreciated that church and what you all did in that community. I know a lot of people were impacted for the good while you all were there. I think the Lord did a good work there. I want to transition a little bit. You stayed bivocational.
Yes.
And a lot of people that may not be from our area, I'm going to let them in on a little geography here. You were living down in Lee County, driving all the way up there multiple times a week, 3 young kids, spouse. Folks, that's not easy. I just want to let everybody in on that. That is a difficult situation. And you had a full-time career, and you were full-time pastoring what I would consider a good-sized congregation.
Yes.
How did you balance that? How do you? Because I know you've never moved off of bivocational ministry. How do you balance that?
Well, I don't know. I don't view it as a balance. Life is ministry. Whether I'm at the church or whether I'm at my office, I mean, I'm doing the same thing. Okay, I'm talking to people, praying with people, witnessing to people. And in fact, I'm doing probably more ministry when I'm at my chiropractic office than when I'm in the church office. So it's not. I just haven't ever viewed it as a balance. It's just life, And it's been the church I'm at now. I'm the first bivocational pastor they've ever had.
Wow.
And so some were a little wondering, how is that going to work? But it's worked tremendous from my perspective because, again, I'm in the community, and that's where ministry gets to happen at, the good stuff.
Did it get easier or harder as your kids got older? I mean, did you ever see like a season where like, hey, this is a real tug on us, and maybe it got better over time?
It may actually get harder as they get older because of their involvement in the extracurricular activities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was at Wise and when my kids were in high school, even 10 years ago, there wasn't near the extracurricular activity there is now.
Right.
It would be, man, I don't know if that would make it very difficult today. But the thing is, like when we were at Wise, Nathan was on the varsity basketball team, JV and varsity basketball team there at Lehigh. And there were games that he chose to miss. We never made our kid go to church and miss a game, but we would give him that option. And there were times when he said, no, I'm going to go to youth tonight. And there were times where he said, no, Dad, I think I'm going to miss youth tonight to go to this game. And we let him have that decision. And I think that taught him something. Just handling it that way.
Yeah.
The sports do not automatically trump what's going on in the church. And this may sound heretical to some, but just because the church doors are open doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to be there. Every time the doors are open, there may be things that are going on that's not for somebody at that moment. So, again, it comes down to learning to walk with God, to follow his voice, and to make sure that he is our first priority with whatever decision we make, that we are seeking to honor him. So,
did you have any good mentors along the way, or maybe still, that you have leaned on heavy in ministry?
I have. The pastor at First Baptist Pennington, Randy Aldridge, was a tremendous mentor to me. He's the one I went to for years. How do you know when God's? I was asking him the same thing he was asking me, man. That's why when you sit down, in fact, what I told you was probably what he told me.
Yeah.
But the one thing he told me was, as far as pastoring, he said, if you can be satisfied doing anything else then do it, because you're probably not called. Because if you're called to do that, you're not going to be completely satisfied doing anything else. And that's where I
Right.
kept finding myself. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we just finished up in our adult Sunday school this past week. We were walking through First Peter, and I had the privilege of closing out chapter 5 to finish the book. And there's a section in there very powerful, and he's talking to elders. And one of the statements he makes is that we're to do it eagerly.
Yes.
And I really sat on that during the week of study, because I thought that is so true in my life. Like, I really wanted and still want to do this,
Yes.
knowing what all comes with it. But I think that's a great quality, and I think that was a good thing. And I do remember you saying that to me as well. Like, if you can't, but I'll sit there, and honestly in my head I thought, I'll die if I don't do this. Like, I don't think people understand, like, I'm going to go crazy if I don't obey this. And so I look back on that with that passage in mind, and I think, man, Peter's absolutely right. Like, there has to be an eagerness, just a real desire to want to do this and to want to do it the right way. I'll finish up with this section here. How long you been in ministry now? How many years does this make you?
Well, if you count that first sunrise service message that I gave, that would have been 97, I guess. I officially started preaching and doing things. Again, it was probably another 10 years after that before I was ordained, and that just fully surrendered to the call to pastor or wherever God leads me. Yeah.
Well, looking back on all those years, what would this Robbie Haynes say to first year Robbie Haynes?
Don't waste so much time, number one. And take your time, and don't get so caught up in the mission that you miss the people who technically are the mission.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can have these ideas and these goals, and sometimes it can almost feel like people are getting in the way of those, the frustrations and the things. And then I just have to step back and realize, wait a minute, they are a part of that goal, walking them through this and growing them. And so, yeah.
Mm. What do you think is the biggest passion in your life as a minister?
Well, I love teaching the Word. I love to see people, because there's just so much biblical illiteracy today. People just don't know the Word.
Yes.
And so, that's really something that I've just, in our church, really been focusing on, and just, I'm just, that's so critical, and so it's nice to see people just not just come to know the Word, but come to know the God of the Word better through the Word.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, I appreciate you answering all that for us and going down memory lane a little bit. I told you I did want to close out before we get to the last couple of announcements here. We always like to give our first-time pastors the quick rapid-fire question series. So if you're ready, we're ready.
This is the part I've been most nervous about.
We like to keep people in the hot seat. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right.
All right, here we go. Number 1, what's your favorite pizza topping?
Mushrooms.
Oh, goodness. If you just said pineapple, I'd have let it go, but wow. Number 2, favorite movie?
Oh, I honestly have to say I don't watch many movies. I can't even think of a favorite movie right now.
That's the good Christian pastor answer right there.
No, I don't have the attention span to sit through one, I think, sometimes.
All right, well, here's a good one for you. Where's the furthest place you've ever traveled to?
Oh, Argentina.
Oh, okay. Missions trip or just vacation?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Mission trip. 11, I think it was 11 hours on a plane.
Wow.
Plane time. Yes.
Goodness, yeah, that's a trip, yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite verse in the Bible?
Romans 12:1. I beseech you, therefore, brethren. Now, you see, I put me on the spot, and I say this, and I quote it all the time. And now I'm on here, I'm thinking, don't blow this. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God. And this last part's what I really like, which is your reasonable service or
Yeah.
worship. That's life.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Number 5 here. Would you rather drink coffee or tea?
Oh, tea by far. Yeah.
Oh,
Coffee.
wow. See,
Yeah.
I'm opposite there. I'm on the coffee team all day.
Yeah.
Waffles or pancakes?
Waffles.
Okay.
Yeah, waffles.
Favorite sports team or teams? Maybe you've got multiple.
Oh, man. See, I'm getting old. I used to could have answered that one right away. My sports teams, I don't pull for teams. I pull for stories.
Okay.
And so as I learn about stories during the year of a team or something going on, those are the things that kind of draw me in and kind of attach me to the teams and the sports. Yeah. So once Michael Jordan retired, and it was like, okay, who can have a favorite sports team now?
Yeah. There you go. I always love asking this to ministers. Would you rather officiate a wedding or a funeral?
Funeral.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm right
No
there with you.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can preach the gospel at a funeral.
And if you do it at a wedding, they might get a little, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how it is. Yeah.
Wedding's too structured for me. Too much pressure.
Number 9 here. I've been wanting to ask you this one because I read this on your church bio. What's the best fish you've ever caught?
Oh.
And remember, you told me before we got on you weren't going to lie, so.
Yeah, no, and I'm not. And actually, I caught one this spring with Caleb down in South Carolina. I think it was 5.5 pound largemouth.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's the largest bass. I think that's what it was. We weighed it. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it was 5.5. Right at it.
Yeah, good fish, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
All right, last one here. If you could have one book and only one book the rest of your life besides the Bible, what would you like to read?
Oh, one book. Well, I'm halfway through one right now on church revitalization, and so I guess I'd like to finish that.
That's a good answer, yeah.
But because other than that, I don't have a favorite. I don't think that I can think of.
You don't know the ending to that one yet, so.
Right, I don't know the ending, so. And experiencing God, that Bible study itself, that book, that would be the one that I would like to have with me to share with people more than anything else. I would have to say.
Yeah. Well, you survived it. I'm proud of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
it wasn't
10.
as rapid as probably you hoped for.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we might have to go back and edit it and make it sound like we really jumped through them, but no, that'll be good. Let everybody know real quick about your all's church location, time, and how they can get involved if they're in or near Southwest Virginia, Lee County area.
Sure. Yeah, I'm at First Baptist Jonesville, and we are right there on Main Street, just right beside the Dollar General store. Service is Sunday school's at 10, church at 11, Sunday night church at 6, Wednesday night prayer at 7. So, yeah.
Do you guys have a website that people can find more information?
We do not have a working website right now. We're in the process of going live with the church app.
Okay.
That will be linked to our site, so we're working on some things. But we have a site, but if you go there, you're not going to find much of anything useful right now at this point until we get everything.
Are you guys on social media in any regard?
Yes, we stream on Facebook. We stream our services live, and then of course services are there recorded also.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it so much. Pastor Robbie Haynes, like you said, First Baptist Church, Jonesville, Virginia, down in Lee County. So if you're in the Southwest Virginia area or Eastern Kentucky, I know they'd probably be glad to have you come on by sometime and fellowship with them and enjoy a good time in the Lord. So, brother, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, had a great time. Don't forget, November 8th and 9th, Deeply Rooted Conference. That's going to be in Kingsport, Tennessee, Shepherd's Rock Bible Church, looking at the Holy Spirit. If you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe hit that like button, leave us a review. That's going to help us out a lot. And the best way you can help us, pray and share it with other people. If you think they might be interested in the content that we have here, we would love to get to know them. They can email us at drigw18@gmail.com. You can find us on social media. That's led by our conference director, Justin Bice. You can check us out on Facebook, X, Instagram, all those places. And again, until next time, we hope you have a great week in Jesus.